G'day guys, Luke here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video guys, we are looking at snake feeding methods. Before we get into that, this is Snickers. She is one of my female children pythons in the family, and today she can be the star of the introduction. For those who might be new to reptiles and snakes in general, just a quick basic tip or rundown on how we feed our snakes. So when we do buy our snake guys, we have to get food from, like everything else we own, any pet, we've got to get food from them to survive. Now we go to our pet shops and buy frozen mice and rats in our freezer section in the pet stores. Obviously we can't go to grocery stores because grocery stores don't have that. And when we get our frozen stuff, we keep our frozen food in the freezer like any other frozen food. And on the day you want to feed the snakes, we'll pull out what we need, let it defrost either naturally or just in warm water. And once the food items have fully defrosted, we'll warm it up and feed it to our snakes. We like to give our snakes warm food. Saying that, some snakes don't care if the food is still, like they say, it's still defrosted, but the food item has gone cool. Some snakes will know the smell and just take it in just by instinct. Some snakes can be fussy and are not taking cool food items, so we've got to warm it up for them to get them to eat. So there are a few things I will go through as well regarding tips and tricks on feeding. One thing we've got to think about as well, guys, is our snake. Each snake can be different. So as you can see, she can happily eat a nice big food item and she's happy. I do have a couple of other snakes who can be a bit fussy when it comes to food. They don't like big food items, so they prefer smaller stuff. So I'm going to feed them a couple of extra mice or rats depending on the snake size, just to make up what they need to get in their system. Now, what I'm about to say will kind of contradict what people would say. Now, when you're feeding a snake, there's a few ways of doing it. You can feed your snake small food items more frequently to keep its body weight up or kind of get it grow at a nice steady rate. Or you can feed it smaller food items and kind of control how fast or how much it will grow. So the smaller food item, the less likely to grow very quickly. You can feed a snake, let's say fuzzy mice for a year and it won't grow that much. But one thing, this is kind of the other method as well, and I prefer this method. Feeding your snakes bigger food items, so usually if I see a bulge in my snake's bellies, that's a good size for me because I know the snakes feel satisfied. That way I don't have to feed them as often. So I feed my guys fortnightly for the most part. Some of my snakes do go off food through the cooler periods of the year, but some snakes eat all year round. So like I said, each snake is different in their own regard. Now some people might feed their snakes bigger food items like I do, but more frequently. They want the snakes to bulk up for breeding or want them to bulk up just to grow quicker. Depending on each individual keeper, there's different ways of doing it. For me, I like to have my snakes, like I said, fed once a fortnight and a decent meal if they're willing to. That way it's satisfied for everyone. Now when it comes to feeding, guys, like I said, I do have a couple of fussier eaters. So Diablo and Willow, my two brown tree snakes, like smaller food items. Charles is another one, my albino, who's kind of odd. She likes more food items, but she doesn't eat as often, so she's not growing as much compared to my other carpets are, who'll be eating normal food sizes for their size. So, yeah. And there's another one I kind of trying to control a bit is Valentino. He's got into his new cage, so now I'm going to bulk him up. So the video you probably see all my snakes eating now is a bit out of date, but it's a feeding video still, so I hope you guys still enjoy. So when a snake is being fed in his enclosure, it's usually a sign of being fussy. With Valentino, I usually fed him in his enclosure because he was a baby. I want to make sure he's established. But in the not too long distant future, I am going to start tub feeding him because he's gotten to the size now that I'm happy to give him a go in tub feeding. As like I said, he's well established at this point, being about 2 years old now. With Willow and Diablo, they actually learnt the routine like every other snake in the room where I feed them every fortnight. So every Tuesday that comes around, they're expecting to get food, so they all know the routine. Plus with them, I've got their own little feeding zone in the enclosure, which they have learnt. So with Diablo, he likes to feed on the right off the top of his backing for the most part, or he comes to the right hand side of the enclosure to feed. With Willow, she's on the left hand side to feed, and their water bowls are kind of the opposite ends of their feeding zone. So they actually have learnt, if I open up the respective door, so let's say for Willow for example, if I feed Willow on the left hand side, I open up her right hand side enclosure door to get to a water bowl. That way she's not thinking food and she's going, okay, general maintenance or I'm getting fresh water. Now, if you have a snake that's being cage fed, guys, I suggest having a snake hook to get the snake out every time you want to handle it. Because every time you do feed the snake in the enclosure, guys, every time you do open up the doors, there's a good chance of the snake associating that with food, and that's where most bites occur. Plus, if your snake is asleep, obviously having no eyelids, if you scare the snake, that's where you also get bitten. So having a snake hook will help wake up the snake and prevent you getting bitten, but as well gets them out of that food mode or food aggression and gets them into more that curious nature, going, okay, what's going on, and vice versa. So having a snake hook is a good tool to have when you're feeding snakes in the enclosure and you still want to kind of handle them and interact with them. Now, this is my personal favourite, is tub feeding. It just is a lot better for me personally. Now, obviously I take my snakes out to feed, put them in the tubs for a few reasons. One, it does help with training. So once my snakes have established themselves, I do feed them in their own respective feeding tubs when it comes to food. That way, once I put them in the feed tub, they go straight to food mode and I know exactly what's going on, compared to actually having them in the enclosure and always having them guessing when you're feeding them or not. Plus, most of my snakes are often housed in pairs. It's just, I like giving my snakes friends, to be honest. So when you have snakes together, you always want to separate them to feed them. Now, I always take both snakes out, because sometimes this can happen where one snake will eat a lot quicker than the other, and I like to put the snake back in its enclosure as soon as possible. For instance, with my diamond pythons, Aurelia is a very fast eater, while Atrim is a very slow eater. So having them both out in their respective tubs, they both get their food. Once about 5 minutes goes by with my snakes finished eating, I put them back in the enclosures. That way they can go straight back into the heat zone and start digesting, while the other snake can still eat in peace. Because if I left Atrim in her enclosure, she would still be eating. Aurelia will be like, oh, I'm done eating, I want to get back in my cage and start digesting. So having my snakes in feeding tubs helps with training, as well gets them back in the heat as soon as possible. So that's why I separate my snakes when it comes to feeding. So that'll be it for today's video, guys. Hopefully it was pretty straightforward. If you are a bit confused what I'm saying, let me know down in the comments below. I'll try and explain a bit more in depth in there. But thank you all, guys, for watching. Any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.